So I think with this question of leadership, which is what this is supposed to be about, I think if one subscribes to the idea that art and cultural activity is essential to fulfilling our highest human potential, then our aspiration might be that we all have artful lives, which is a different aspiration from thinking only about a vibrant cultural sector. There's a fundamental difference in framing an intention around artful lives for everyone and thinking more exclusively about the health of a cultural sector. And I think that is a challenge for leadership at this time. How do we pivot from something that is more self-referential to something that is more outward-looking? So if you buy into that, what does leadership require? Surely it's imagination and expansive thinking. So again, not only thinking about the transactional kind of art that we usually default to, but something that is more nuanced than that, that takes into consideration the varied role of artists and the varied role that participants play in relation to art form and to artists as well. It requires strategic cross-sectoral work and connections, and some of this came through in Ann Markison's presentation on creative placemaking, but also I think a lot of these features are embodied in the experience of Anne, Stephanie, and Crystal as they talked about their advocacy work. It requires a generative and generous approach, and what I mean by that is that it's the opposite of clenching and starting from a supplicant position, right? It's starting from a position of power that you have something to offer. And I've been in a couple of situations where what I said probably wasn't that popular, but remember I was at a conference in 2008 and I was invited to speak, and it was right after the crash, and there was a lot of panic. And everybody was getting budgets cut, not just the arts, but across the board. There were cuts left and right. And I was invited to an arts advocacy meeting, and the tone was really shrill, and it was about not getting your budget slashed and keeping what you could. And it occurred to me that a different approach could be, this is an all hands on deck moment. What is it that the arts field has to offer? And how can one convey the centrality and crucial nature of what it is that it has to deliver? And how much of a gap there would be if whatever strategy was being created didn't include that. So I found a similar situation in doing some work in New Orleans, where at one point post-Katrina, there was some organizing around rebuilding and what have you, and there was a faction of the arts community there that also, and you understand it, there was that clenching and the shrillness that had to do with don't cut. And that is not to be Pollyannish and say that those aren't real concerns, but to start from the posture of I have something that is essential to making this right, not a silver bullet, but essential to making this right, along with other things that are also essential, I think is a very different position than starting from a position that is more of a supplicant or coming out of fear. And that's a hard thing to ask a field that is often beleaguered with political realities. But I think it's something that has to be embraced as we think about what are the qualities of leadership that we need moving forward.